if you're an investor coming into the market now, where are the kind of the genuine opportunities that you can see in the horizon?
Depends what you're after. If it's a standard, small investor looking for a buy-to-let or whatever, I think there are opportunities in areas like Midtown. There are always going to be opportunities in areas like, for example, Raggedstaff and frontline key frontline properties and prime properties like Raggedstaff and King's Wharf, etc. And those are, that can be 1, 2, 3 bedrooms. Yields at the moment are slightly up from where they were, probably about 4.1, 4.2% if you get a decent deal. But you're paying high prices for these locations, and therefore some people may think, well, actually, I'm still paying 8.5, 9.5, 10,000 pounds a square meter, which is quite a bit. You can maybe get some better value in different areas like Devil's Tower Road, for example, where you're paying far less, but where there's higher volume, smaller properties, more being built there. So I think it's really for the investor to analyze what they're after. Interest rates obviously have been falling. I think they've stayed there, but that's been good insofar as that capture of buy-to-let investors potentially comes back into play as it had been. But then you've got other investors. Then you've got investors who, you've got family offices, you've got funds that look at a different type of investor. It's investment rather. It's not a property, individual property. It's rather a building with good yields, with long-term tenants, with capital appreciation. It's been interesting that we've been involved in quite a few of those over the past couple of years. Maybe not between 23 and 25 because things had gone cold then, but certainly prior to 22, we saw significant amounts come in, and we were involved in quite some large, interesting projects of buildings, which were commercial office buildings, which had been sold, where the returns are great. We've started to see that happen again now. Okay. There are 1 or 2, big clients, family offices that have been buying anyway, and again, they've had the foresight to do that over a period of time when we've seen that slow period, if you like. So I think, in answer to your question and the previous ones, I think the upshot of it all is that regardless of the profile of the client or investor or owner-occupier, there seems to be that mood of it could be the right time now.
Okay. With that, I think that, one of my questions is around, I guess, on the lower end or the opportunity side of it, and a word that doesn't get used very much with Gibraltar's property prices at least, but is there any segment of the market which is kind of undervalued at the moment?
I think it's difficult to say to someone that a 3-bedroom in Midtown, for example, at 1.3, 1.4 million is undervalued because it's 1.3, 1.4 million. And I think ultimately when it comes down to being undervalued or it really boils down to what's the demand for this and what's the demand going to be for this. If we feel that there's going to be demand at that sort of level, where Gibraltar has moved completely away from brass plating, where generally people, because of the residency rules, which hopefully we'll hear of soon, it's going to be about people living in Gibraltar because they have to have larger properties. One can say, okay, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms are going to be in demand because we're going to have people coming into Gibraltar who can't just buy a studio and say, I've got residency. So one might argue that although 1.2, 1.3 million for a 3-bedroom property is a lot of money, actually, if you've not got very many of those available, and we know that the drive is going to be that, one might argue that they are undervalued. We did, and I'm not here to sort of boost any particular development, but we were involved in the consultancy on One Bayside, which when we priced it in 2022, 23, I think it was driven by, let's make sure we get the sales done so that we can build this, and actually it's going to be ready in about a year's time. It's built, the structure's there. I think there's good value there to a large degree. Why? Because look, you're not frontline, you haven't got amazing views, but there are good views. but you're buying 3 bedrooms which are 140, 150 square meters for under £1 million. That's actually really good value. So, it depends on the profile, but I think in general terms, you can find value, but it just depends what your view of Gibraltar is moving forward. Again, as an estate agent, as a property person, as a Gibraltarian, as someone who's got confidence in Gibraltar, my view is that Gibraltar will do well, and therefore, in most cases, you will find value because we only see the market generally doing well. We've been through that bottoming out, and I think with the agreement, we will see things pick up extremely well. And I think there's a lot to be said for what the agreement and the residency rules will impose insofar as criteria for people to come over, and how that's going to have, I think, generally a positive impact in the mainstay of the market.